Guys like us, that work on ranches, are the loneliest guys in the world. They got no family, they don't belong in no place. With us, it ain't like that. We got a future. We got somebody to talk to. That gives a damn about us. Why didn't you say you do it yourself? You know all of it. No, you tell it. It ain't the same if I tell it. Go on, George. How I get to tend the rabbits? Well, said George, we'll have a big vegetable patch and a rabbit hutch and chickens. And when it rains in the winter, we'll just say the hell was going to work. And we'll build up a fire in the stove and sit around and listen to the rain come down on the roof. The bunkhouse was a long rectangular building. Inside the walls were whitewashed and the floor unpainted. In 3 walls there were small square windows, and in the fourth a solid door with a wooden latch. Against the walls were 8 bunks, 5 of them made up of blankets, and the other 3 showing their burlap tigging. Over each bunk there was nailed an apple box with the opening for it so that it made 2 shelves for the personal belongings of the occupant of the bunk. And these shelves were loaded with little articles: soap and talcum powder, razors, and those Western magazines ranch men love to read and scoff at and secretly believe. And there were medicines on the shelf and little vials, combs, and from nails on the box sides a few neckties. Near one wall there was a black cast iron stove, its stovepipe going straight up to the ceiling. In the middle of the room stood a big square table littered with playing cards, and around it were group boxes for the players to sit on. At about 10 o'clock in the morning, the sun threw a bright, dust-laden bar through one of the side windows, and in it, out of the beam flashed shot like working stars. The wooden latch raised, the door opened, and a tall, stoop-shouldered old man came in. He was dressed in blue jeans and he carried a big push broom in his left hand. Behind him came George, and behind George, Lenny.
Candy rolled to the edge of his bunk. He reached over and patted the ancient dog, and he apologized. I've been around him so much I never noticed how he stinks. Well, I can't stand him in here, said Carson. That stink hangs around even after he's gone. He walked over with his heavy-legged stride and looked at the dog. He ain't no good to you, Candy, and he ain't no good to himself. Why don't you shoot him, Candy? The old man squirmed uncomfortably. Well, hell, I had him so long, had him since he was a pup. I herded sheep with him, he said proudly. You wouldn't think it to look at him now, but he was the best damn sheepdog I ever seen. Look, Candy, this old dog just suffers himself all the time. You was to take him out and shoot him right in the back of the head. He leaned over and pointed. Right there. Why, he'd never know what hit him. No, he said softly. No, I couldn't do that. I had him too long. You don't have no fun, Carlson insisted. Tell you what, I'll shoot him for you. Then it won't be you that does it. I'm so used to him, he said softly. I had him from a pup. Carlson said, the way I'd shoot him, it would feel nothing. I'd put the gun right there. He pointed with his toe, right the back of the head. He wouldn't even quiver. Maybe tomorrow. Let's wait till tomorrow. Although there was evening brightness showing through the windows of the bunkhouse, inside it was dusk. Through the open door came the thuds and occasional clangs of a horseshoe game, and now and then the sound of voices raised in approval or derision. Slim and George came into the darkening bunkhouse. Slim sat down on a box, and George took his place opposite. It wasn't nothing, said Slim. I would have had to have drowned most of them anyway. No need to thank me about that. We'll have trouble keeping him from getting right in the box with them pups. It wasn't nothing, Slim repeated. Say, you sure you was right about him? Maybe he ain't bright, but I never seen such a worker. He damn near killed his partner bucking barley. There ain't nobody can keep up with him. George spoke proudly. Just tell Lenny what to do, and he'll do it if it don't take no figuring. Funny how you and him string along together. It was Slim's calm invitation to confidence. What's funny about it? George demanded defensively. Oh, I don't know. Hardly none of the guys ever travel together. I hardly never seen 2 guys travel together. You know how the hands are. They just come in, get their bunk, and work a month, and then they quit and go out alone. Never seem to give a damn about nobody. Just seems kind of funny, a cuckoo like him and a smart little girl like you traveling together.
Candy and Lenny stood up and went towards the door. Crooks called, Candy. Huh? Remember what I said about home and doing odd jobs? Yes, said Candy, I remember. Well, just forget it, said Crooks. I didn't mean it, just feeling. I wouldn't want to go no place like that. Well, okay, if you feel like that. Good night. The 3 men went out of the door. I As they went through the barn, the horses snorted and the halter chains rattled. Crooks sat in his bunk and looked at the front door for a moment, and then he reached for a liniment bottle. He pulled out and shared the back, poured a little liniment into his pink palm, and reached around. He fell slowly to rubbing his back.
Lenny sat in the hay and looked at a little dead puppy that lay in front of him. Then he looked at it for a long time, and then he put one huge hand and stroked it clear from one end to the other. Now maybe George ain't gonna let me tend no rabbits if he finds out you got killed. Suddenly his anger arose. God damn you, he cried. Why you gotta go get killed? You ain't so little as mice. He picked up the pup and hurled it from him. He turned his back on it. Now he won't let me tend no rabbits. He rocked himself back and forth in sorrow. Curly's wife came round the corner of the last stall. She came very quietly so that Lenny didn't see her. She said, "What you got there, sonny boy?" Lenny glared at her. "George says I ain't have nothing to do with you. Talk to you or nothing." "I get lonely," she said. "You can talk to people, but I can't talk to nobody but Curly, else he gets mad. How'd you like not to talk to anybody?" "What kind of harm am I doing to you? Seems like they ain't got none of them cares how I gotta live. I tell you, I ain't used to living like this. I could have made something myself," she said darkly. "Well, I ain't told nobody this before. Maybe I oughtn't to. I don't like Curly. He ain't a nice fella." And because she had confided in him, she moved closer to Lenny and sat beside him. She asked, "What makes you so nuts about rabbits?" Lenny explained, "I like to pet nice things with my fingers, soft things." "Well, who don't?" she said. "My hair is soft and fine, 'cause I brush it a lot. That makes it fine. Here, feel right here." She took Lenny's hand and put it on her head. "Feel right around. See how soft it is?" "You stop it now, you'll mess it up." She jerked her head sideways and Lenny's fingers closed on her hair and hung on. "Let go," she cried. "You let go." She screamed, and Lenny's other hand closed over her mouth and nose. "Please don't," he begged. "Oh, please don't do that. George will be mad." She continued to struggle, and he shook her then, and he was angry with her. "Don't you go yelling," he said. He shook her, and her body flopped like a fish, and then she was still, for Lenny had broken her neck. Then he whispered in fright, "I done a bad thing. I done another bad thing."
Look across the river, Lenny. Lenny turned his head and looked across the pool and opened the darkening slope to the goblins. George began. He reached in his side pocket and brought out Carson's lugger. He snapped off the safety. The handled gun lay on the ground behind Lenny's back. He looked at the back of Lenny's head and at the place where the spine and skull were joined. "For the rabbits," Lenny shouted. "For the rabbits," George repeated. "And I get to tend the rabbits, and you get to tend the rabbits." George raised the gun and steadied it, and he brought the muzzle of it close to the back of Lenny's head. The hand shook violently, but his face set and his hand steadied. He pulled the trigger. The crash of the shot rolled up the hills and rolled down again. Lenny jarred, and then settled slowly forward to the sand, and he lay without quivering.